Good evening. My name is Chance Bowen, and this is the Paint the Town Red podcast. First up, we got some news. Trump's bold messaging and media moves. The Trump administration rolled out a revamped communication strategy to combat misinformation, leveraging social media, memes, podcasts, and video to drive their narratives. Wow, that's interesting. We're going to see the memes coming out of the White House, I guess, using AI and such. We'll probably know which ones they are. But this is interesting. They even say misinformation to combat misinformation. Republicans will step in line and go, "That's great. Yeah, we do need to do that. We need to manage this misinformation." And then when the Democrats do it, they'll get in and say, "You can't do that. There's freedom of speech. La la la." It's just a big old stupid circle of crap from both of them. They both do it. It's disgusting. If you're so dumb to fall in the ideological lines of Republican and Democrat, you are brainwashed. At home, Trump proposed revoking home rule from Washington, D.C., and developing the National Guard to pretty much manage Washington, D.C., because the police officers aren't doing their job. This comes just after an incident between a man named Big Balls. Can you believe his name's Big Balls? Yeah, his name's Big Balls. And he is saving our country by figuring out where all the corruption is. He's on Doge and he's helping Elon Musk. And so he got in an instance where he tried to save some woman from being robbed. And then he got kind of beat up a little bit. He's got blood, pictures online of him with blood all over his body and such. So Trump, after hearing this, tweeted about it. Now he's planning on having the federal government manage DC, which I don't really have a stance on it. I mean, that's great for Washington, D.C. Can we do that in the rest of the cities around the nation? There's a lot of crime. Crime's up everywhere. What's funny is like CNN's like, even though Trump's wanting to do this, but, crime is down by 27% since last year. Yeah, since last year. What about since the 80s? What percentage is it up since the 80s, It's way up. It's astronomically up. Amy Sherald, who is an artist, and she's most famous for an art piece that she made of Michelle Obama, which I will show you right here. And then she recently, with the Smithsonian, had made a Statue of Liberty, but that was trans. A painting of the Statue of Liberty that was trans. And Trump had an executive order that supposedly is supposed to, federally funded museums are not allowed to promote politically driven art pieces such as this. So the Smithsonian had replied back to Amy saying they don't want to show her piece as the main reason to come. They just, they want to show maybe a video of the reactions to it and kind of switch up some of the marketing. And she was not having it. She said, "No, we're not going to cower to Trump's political vision. And she's not going to be involved with the Smithsonian pretty much." But what gets me is like the Republicans will get on board and say, no, yeah, we should censor the art community. Yeah. And it's like, I don't want to censor the art community. That's freedom. If that's what people like to see, then that's what people like to see. But here's the thing. They don't like to see it. And I'll show you the painting. No one watching this is going to look at that painting and go, "Man, that's just something I've never seen before. That's just a masterpiece." No, it's not. So in the real world, that art won't survive. You know where it does survive? It survives in a corrupt American system that has kids there's wealthy people. And then their kids don't really do anything in life, but they'll like do some crappy painting and they're like a mid artist, not even a mid artist. But then what will happen is everyone wanting their daddy's money will go in and hire that artist to do portraits around town or be featured in a giant artist show like this one. And they will make it to where their following is fake. It's a fake following. No one's interested in that art besides super left-leaning people, which are a very small percentage of the population. And so this art only exists, and even my city does it. They'll be like, "Oh, we hired an artist, and they happen to be from Sacramento or from San Francisco, and it happens to be the donors, the people that are lobbying to get our city more money, and they're all left-wing." This is what they do as a little kickback to them getting help. They're wanting help, so they hire these people, and they get paid an astronomical amount to do like a crappy painting. They'll get like 600 grand. It's just totally outrageous. But that's the system. Now, will Trump talk about that? Will any of the Republicans talk about that? Nope, they won't. They'll talk about instead, we should ban trans art from museums. And then guess what that does? That just makes her a martyr. And then it just makes that art actually relevant when it would never even been relevant in the real world. And so, again, instead of looking at the ground, the facts on the ground, people are going to play this stupid political game of right versus left, we're going to get nowhere, and it will give people like Amy the headlines. They run it in every news headline. And the reason is because, like I said, we have a system that is trying to foment division between the left and the right on purpose. And this is how they do it. This is the exact reason and why they do it, how they do it. But guess what everyone's focused on? How could you do a picture of a trans Statue of Liberty? And they're going to be focused on, why is his name Big Balls? Despite all the money he's saving us, despite him doing good stuff for our nation, they don't care. Why is his name Big Balls? Originally slated to appear at the National Smithsonian Portrait Gallery. Now, that's kind of it for all the news today. There's some more things that's boring. There's some stuff about, Trump and Putin not being able to meet because Putin has warrant arrests for everywhere, pretty much around the world, besides a few nations. So they're going to meet in those nations, Saudi Arabia being one of them. And hopefully we can get, Thursday? So maybe Friday, I think they meet. So we'll keep you updated on that. That's a big deal, They got nukes. We got nukes pointed at each other, and hopefully, we come to a conclusion here on this Ukraine stuff. But will we? No. Why? Because there's too much money in it continuing. That's why. Well, no, it's not why. It's because Putin's Hitler. It's very simple. It's Putin's Hitler, and he wants to own the whole world, and just like in World War II, it's a guy that just wants to run the whole world. He wants to take over the world. That's what it is. Simple as that. And America, we're such good guys. We got to stop those bad people from taking over the world. So yesterday I talked about doing a series of stories showing how pretty much there's these group of people that pretty much run our government, and they run governments around the world, and they own our financial system. And so kind of diving into some of the history on how it started and kind of how they're corrupt. Like yesterday I talked about the story of the Titanic and the Federal Reserve, and how it kind of got created. So now, today, I'm going to talk about a story that was from over 200 years ago, back in 1815, a time of war, revolution, and empire. Europe was burning. Napoleon Bonaparte, the man who shaken the old world order, was making his final stand at a little Belgian crossroad known as Waterloo. On the other side stood the British, led by Duke of Wellington, backed by Prussian allies, and someone else, someone quite far more dangerous. The Rothschilds, 5 brothers, each planted in different power centers of Europe. Now, if you don't know about the Rothschilds were pretty much, they invented banking essentially. And what it started off as, and they happened to be Jewish, and what happened was the Jews were obviously passed around to different societies over time, and they were only able to operate in businesses that were mobbish, right? They weren't able to go do taxidermy or something because they were not respected by the rest of the town. And so they would get into things like lending, and they would lend. Oh, not to mention that, Christians predominantly in Europe also disagreed with lending. It's called usury, and as actually a sin. They were allowed to do it, and so they did. And they'd lend out money, and then they would not get the money back from the people they lent to. So then they'd start a mob, and then the mob would go pretty much take their house or confiscate some of their items. And they built up quite a bit of wealth this way. Well, then that's kind of what started the banks, giving out money, amassing a ton of debt, and stockpiling a bunch of money and controlling the currency. The Rothschilds, though, took it a step further. So Mayor Rothschild had 5 children, and he sent those children out to start a centralized bank all over Europe. Ashmel in Frankfurt, Solomon in Vienna, Karl in Naples, James in Paris, and the most cunning of them all, Nathan Mayer Rothschild in London. They didn't wear uniforms, they didn't carry swords, they carried information and gold. While kings were bleeding their nations dry to fund armies, the Rothschilds were playing a much smarter game. Loan money to both sides. Napoleon needed funds. Rothschild's gold. Britain needed supplies. Rothschild's credit. They weren't fighting the war, they were owning it. And here's where the story gets real dark and real powerful. June 1815, the Battle of Waterloo is fought. Napoleon loses. Nathan Rothschild knew it before the British government did. So the way back in the day, if you'd win a battle, and then they would take the message from horse and buggy, and the caravan coming into town would be paraded and cheered if they won, or booed if they lost. Not booed, but taken in if they lost. Well, this took about a day from where they were. whereas the Rothschilds had invested in spies on the battlefield to kind of get a better sense of what's going on. They have heavy stake in the war. And they use, some people say, speedboats at the time. And the most likely answer, though, is the passenger pigeon, which then later became mainstream way of doing things or sending messages at a quick rate. And they invested in passenger pigeons, and they had spies on the battlefield. They sent a passenger pigeon to Mayor Rothschild, and he got the message that Napoleon had fell. Anyway, he got the message a full day ahead of the crown. So what did Nathan do? He didn't run to Parliament. He didn't shout, "We won!" No, he walked into the London Stock Exchange, stone-faced, and started selling off British bonds quietly, subtly, and just like that, panic set in. The other traders saw Nathan doing this, the man with the best intel in the land, dumping British assets. They assumed the worst. Napoleon had won. Britain was doomed. On top of this, not just quietly selling, he also sent his managers for his other bank, his smaller banks, to spread the word that Napoleon had. So they followed suit. Bond prices collapsed. Fortunes evaporated. The life savings of families all over Europe. Once the market hit rock bottom, Rothschild's agents bought everything back for pennies on the pound. The very bonds that financed Britain's war effort, now owned by a man they thought was just a banker. The Rothschilds didn't just win the war. They bought the government's debt, secured their grip on the Bank of England, and in doing so, gained unparalleled influence over British finance and foreign policy. From that day forward, their power was no longer behind the scenes. It was built into the system. Sounds eerily familiar to what's happening today? This is just one of the stories of how the people who influenced the economic system in the West and how it was corrupt from the start, centralizing our bank and then not backing our currency with gold, which then led to endless wars in order to prop up the US dollar. Now, knowing this makes you think, wow, this is occurring today, and it no doubt is. We have sold our manufacturings to other nations, killing the middle class, immigrated people here, dropping our birth rate to non-replacement levels. And let me make something clear. When I say that, people assume that I'm just talking about the white people, which I'm pro-white. I want to look out for my own community, which you're not allowed to do if you're white, by the way. But I'm not. I'm also looking out for the other populations that are within America, like the Hispanic community or the Black community. And the Black community, it mostly affects them. Also, by making compounding interest the number one way to make money, causing our housing prices to be so expensive that the average age of people to buy a home today is 38. In the 90s, it was 26. Now, how do we change this? How do we turn this around? How is the ship sinking and we're going to stop it from sinking? If you talk to Republicans or you try to go through the normal political route of doing things, it's by giving immigrants a chance, not being racist, except that gay marriage is okay now. Be the Democrats from 10 years ago. Go into debt by going to college. Vote for politicians that continue to sell out later generations. Trump really stuck it to Nancy Pelosi. Am I right? He's our guy. I trust him. And we have to support Israel. After all, it says in the Bible that they are the chosen ones, and the world will turn against Israel. America is a country of principles, not of blood or of a group of people, but Israel. Now, Israel, they are an ethnically pure Jewish state, and we celebrate that, and we want to give them money. But if we had that in America, well, now, that would be racist and against our values. This is why we support people like Nick Fuentes. This is why we are no longer going to get wrapped up in your white guilt that you live your life by. You see a white person, you automatically think that they must have had a good home life. It's sad. We want solutions to this country. Big issues, and Trump And the establishment Republicans do not offer that. It's as simple as that. This is the Paint the Town Red podcast. My name is Chance Bowen. We hope you have a wonderful day.